and welcome back if you have joined us before. Greetings to you if you are new. Hope you enjoy joining us here. If you are new, hit the like button, hit that subscribe button, hit the notifications button, and then you'll find out when there are new videos. And today I'm going to be doing some more White Dwarf videos. We've got a lot to go through as always, so let's crack on. Okay, here we are again on our time warp adventure back in time with White Dwarf 66 and White Dwarf 186. White Dwarf 66 being June 1985 and 186 being June 1995. So let's go with the more recent of the two. Look at this brightly coloured cover. Oh, we should say while we've got side by side, look, dragons. There's a very dragon-y theme going on here, and you've very clearly got your sword and sorcery 80s dragon and your bright red 90s dragon going on here. Very clear categorization. And you can also see we've got a free plastic wizard on the cover of this one, sadly no longer here, but we will find out more about those within, I am sure. Here are our recent Talon Desert Raiders fighting against some Storm Boys and some epic stuff going on here. They're giving us a free wizard, that's nice. They're bringing out Dark Elves. Yeah, was never so interested in Dark Elves. Bringing out Tyranids, following fresh on the heels of epic Tyranids here. Lots of talk about how wonderful the new Scout Titan for epic is, and just a tiny little bit about the Night Baron, but we'll see pictures of those later on. Azhag the Slaughterer on the second best wyvern ever. We'll get to him later on as well. And yes, more Dark Elves, Dark Elves, Dark Elves. Cool. Warhammer Quest, of course. Warhammer Quest. Love Warhammer Quest. Here are those Dark Elf Spearmen then, and Crossbowmen. I don't know what it is about the Dark Elves that never really appealed. I really don't know what it is. I can't put my finger on it, but they're sort of a secondary race in my mind. I don't really... Not very inventive possibly, just dark high elves gone evil, but then the high elves are pretty horrible anyway. Here we are with the wizards. You can see the 8 wizards here. Now, somebody who is more up on this will know, I meant to look this up before doing this video and I didn't, I forgot to. Here you've got the 8 colleges of magic. In Warhammer you have 8 colleges of magic. You have bright, jade, light, celestial, gold, amber. What's missing? Because I'm pretty sure that Dark Elf Sorceress and Chaos Sorcerer aren't colleges of magic. Which of the 2 colleges are not represented here? Is High? High is one of them, right? Storm. Is Storm the other one? Don't know. Interesting. Wonder why those 2 were not picked, possibly because they already had these from the Talisman game. Anyway, these are nice. I like the 4th edition plastics generally. I've got this chap, I've got this lady. I'd quite like to get hold of the Celestial Wizard. You don't see him very often. I like the bold nature of the plastics in this era. They tried to break away from that flatness while still being very restricted from being flat and keeping everything monopose, and I like the way that they did that. It sort of works, even though you've got some flat areas. They're not in such weird places as they are with the multi-pose, or not multi-pose because they're only single pose. The monopose multi-part plastics that you get nowadays. And of course there's no fiddly putting together. These ones are ready to go as soon as you've got them. Talking a little bit about magic there, the Chimera comes out. So the Rhino has been out for a while. We've seen a few variants on the Rhino kit come out, and now we've got the Chimera, so we're going to start getting some variants for that. Of course the Leman Russ is out as well. And now we see why there's a dragon on the front cover. It's because this is the release of Talisman Dragon's Tower, the coolest of the expansions. Look at this heap. Look at this heap with the cool plastic dragon on top of it. Absolutely excellent set. Does obviously add time to the game, which with Talisman we don't want to add too much time to the game, but also makes the end bit a bit less predictable and a bit cooler. So I would quite happily play Talisman with this expansion and without the 4 around the outside. And they've given us some additional cards for some extra characters that wouldn't fit in the expansion box, which is nice of them. Oh, I should say, this plastic dragon, massive turning point in Citadel Dragons, because from this point on you get these plastic dragon wings being used in an awful lot of the metal dragon kits, because obviously metal wings are really heavy, they're hard to get fixed into the body of your dragon and stay there, so they use the plastic wings. And even in some cases I think the whole plastic body is used with just variant heads, perhaps a variant arm, and you get this whole sort of S-shaped serpentine dragon period that's all very much based around the look and stance of this plastic dragon, which I like. It's a very divided opinion. I like for airy, floaty air dragons. Give me grounded fire drakes and worms and things any day, but for airy drakes, yeah, I like the serpentine dragon look and stance. Rattling snipers, halflings in 40k. Halflings are good with bows, so of course their 40k alternative are good with guns, and they hide in things with their cloaks. The second in the Warhammer Quest Extra Super Duper Quest, Mega Quest issues. This obviously best piece of terrain ever built in a White Dwarf. Love it, love it. With the heroes fighting various undead monsters. And the Flames of Khazla uses this tile here, which is a 4-part or 4-tile room, 4-space room, and it's got this burning brazier in the corner here, which can be any of these things. So it can be a thing that gives you a task, it can be a thing that gives you a gift, it can be a thing that requires an offering of you, it can be a thing that rejuvenates you, it can be a thing that's guarded by a powerful monster, it can be a thing that's like an oracle. It's a really neat way of taking essentially a fairly standard object and looking at it from lots of different angles, and if nothing else I hope it encourages people to do that with other things, make up their own things that this could be. Here are those Eldar Revenant Scout Titans that the editorial was raving about, and they are lovely, aren't they? Look how graceful they are with their big arching back crest things. In contrast, the Imperial Baron here looks like, I don't know, the Terminator gone wrong. Looks like someone made a design error with the TR2. Yeah, not such keen on that one. And this is cool. This is obviously, being an Eldar Titan, it's very athletic, so it can jump over things, it can dance up in the air and shoot things. It's very cool. If you like the Revenant Scout Titan, even if you don't play Epic. Here's some more looking at Golden Demon 95, which is coming up. So this is a how to plan your figures, what to think about doing, and we're going to get to an article in a few issues time, which is the entries for that Golden Demon 95 competition. But it's interesting to see these previous ones. So you've got this 1994 entry, although it's got a fairly modern, I say modern, this era doom wheel. All of the texture on the surface, all of the skeletons, this tree, they all have that very 80s Golden Demon vibe to it. The colour schemes on some of these are not quite the bright, vivid colours of this era of White Dwarf, but I think by the time we get to this year's 1995, that is, Golden Demon, we're going to start seeing a lot more vibrant colours coming through. And here is an ongoing battle report. So if you remember the Mighty Clash of Many Armies, this is another one of those follow-ons. Jervis wrote a series of campaign things from a previous White Dwarf, and this is playing through them, and this has got to the next one. Chaos Dwarves versus Empire. Nil-nil, end of turn 1, nil-nil, end of turn 2. Empire pulling ahead ever so slightly, and then by the end of the game, it's a bit of a full-on conclusion, Empire winning by 20 points. Largely because in the very early stages of the game, the two mighty heroes of the Chaos Dwarf force, if I can find a picture of them, there you go, you've got the Lord on the Bull Taurus and Astrogoth, the High Prince of Hashut, High Priest rather of Hashut, thanks to a magical item, ended up fighting each other, and Astrogoth being killed, and the Taurus then not coming back on side. So it left the Chaos Dwarves completely without any magical support, and they suffered greatly for it. There's those Imperial tanks. Here's that Azhag the Slaughterer on an S-shaped dragon, but in this case an entirely metal S-shaped dragon, not got the plastic wings on this one. And I said earlier the second best wyvern, because of course the first best wyvern, in my opinion, is the one that came prior to this with a very serpentine head and the choice of orc characters that sit on the back of it. This one just looks like a scaly dragon, and of course that's what it is, that's fine, but it doesn't, as a wyvern, as a distinct species, I think it should have that more sort of serpentine look because of its lack of limbs. But there you go, it's not what they decided to go with for this design, so it's not what they've gone with. There we go, and there's Azhag the Slaughterer versus another S-shaped Prince Imric. We saw him a while ago, another S-shaped dragon there. So cool, that is White Dwarf 186. So now we're going to take a look at White Dwarf 66. Here we go, back 10 years earlier. Unfortunately this cover has had a bit of tearing going on. I think that was unintentional. I don't think they've ripped something off here. Must have just got caught in a door or something. I won't dwell too much over these early bits. Let's get to the meat of the articles. A look at Middle-earth role-playing, simplified Rollmaster system. Interesting, I hadn't realised until I read this that they actually wrote the source books, certainly the early ones for MERP, for the Rollmaster system, so they don't actually tie up with the MERP system. That seems weird. Maybe they reissued them later on. Anyway, I used to have Rollmaster. I never really got my head around how Rollmaster worked, but MERP sounds interesting. Part 4 of Thrud the Barbarian, Thrud the Destroyer, who is on a mission to avenge the sacking of a village, and we return to the nemesis, the arch villain of this storyline for Part 4. Here it is the Black Current, returning to his fortress to be met by a familiar figure. We've met this guy before. This is Tomi Cooper, the evil magician who has opened a rent in the space-time vortex, much like we have in looking at these old White Dwarves, and has brought evil in all forms from across time, including the Daleks and the Hells Angels, and it's probably a Panzer division, I would imagine. All of which will be arrayed against Thrud in possibly the next episode. Here's some stuff on being a Spider-Man in superhero adventures. Here is an article for Warhammer Fantasy Battle on launching ambushes, very much predicated on having Games Master, because of course early versions of Warhammer have come out of the RPG sort of field, so they're very much imagining that a game will be set up and run by a referee or a Games Master, and some ways of setting up an ambush one side from another as part of an ongoing scenario or an ongoing campaign. So very much looking at a story arc rather than seeing an individual game as a thing in its entirety. seeing it as part of a series of adventures and envisaging perhaps a small column of troops being waylaid on their way to somewhere else. Very cool drawings here, of course. I expect we'll see these in one of the Encyclopedia Warhammer issues, or what's the word? Volumes, thank you. Volumes, one of the Warhammer Encyclopedia Warhammer volumes, the relevant edition. I think we're in 2nd edition. The Horse of the Invisible, A Call of the Cthulhu, A Call of the Cthulhu? No, Call of Cthulhu scenario. This is quite fun. This is based on a novel. Let me find it. William Hope Hodgson's short story of the same name, The Horse of the Invisible. It changes a few things so that people who are familiar with the novel or the short story aren't going to immediately know what's going to happen, but I think it's probably best if you are unfamiliar with it, as I am. But yes, a rather terrifying ghost story, kind of Hound of the Baskervilles-y. Family legend sets out to kill current member of the family. Investigators are hired to protect her. And it all gets convoluted with somebody else turning up and appearing to be the Phantom, but then are they the Phantom, or are they responsible for the Phantom some other way? It's cool, it's good, it's a nice little scenario. I can see it working nicely. Pink pages here, advertising Citadel miniatures. The Disciples of the Red Redemption, not the Disciples of the Pink Redemption, obviously. And the Knights of the Avenging Flame, or Cleansing Flame. I wasn't familiar with their storyline before. It's quite fun to have a read of that. This, by the way, this ongoing story here is a continuation of the Philosopher's Stone that starts here. It doesn't end there. This is a sort of pull out in the middle. This is an interesting one. What to say about this storyline? It goes into great depth about laboratory equipment, reading alchemical symbols, mixing chemicals. You could spend days and days, well hours certainly, playing around with different things. You would never come up with the elixir of life. You know, here's a table of alchemical reactions. If you mix certain things in certain combinations in certain order, here are the possible things that will happen to you, referenced up here. I mean, really, I think the adventure itself, although there is a bit of an adventure, is a bit lame. I think really they ought to have just printed this as an article on using alchemy in games, because as an alchemy resource it's phenomenal. It's a little bit bland, and as an adventure I can't imagine players ever having any real success with it, because the whole point of like the Philosopher's Stone is that it doesn't really exist. And this seems to take that line even in D&D, where basically anything can exist. So it's a bit of a shame, but I think, you know, use it as a resource for doing alchemy in games. The Travellers are still with us. Oh yes, indeed they are. Things are nearing a climax, apparently. Maybe that means that they'll be leaving us very soon. Here's another scenario. So this is the Fiend Factory. Remember that Fiend Factory was churning out monster after monster after monster, and there were some letters saying, how about you do some scenarios instead? So they have written a scenario around the new monsters that they want to bring in. And this is kind of cool, because some of these monsters, like the, I don't know how to say this, Gakragar, the Strong Toad, and the Swamp Lurker, and the Green Salamanders, these are things that are very location specific. So like, you know, you'd get wildlife that's specific to a particular region. This is very particular to the marshland region, and that kind of works. But when you get to the Silent Hater that's given its name here to the scenario, We don't need another one of those. There are plenty of things like this that already exist in D&D at this point. We don't need another one. Thank you. And the scenario itself is just a vehicle to introduce these things. It would be cooler if this was maybe these 4 possibly, but these 3 monsters with like a wilderness guide, then you could just superimpose on any swampy region that you're playing a game in. But they decided to make it a scenario, so that's fine. I guess there's nothing stopping you from just using the character bits of it. 5 different rings in AD&D: the Ring of Good, the Ring of Evil, the Ring of Chaos, the Ring of Law, the Ring of Neutrality. Basically, they're alignment rings, yes, hence rings of alignment. And what's kind of fun about this is that there's a little bit of a storyline for each about where they've disappeared to, who had them last, what the story is surrounding them. So any one of those, I mean, you wouldn't want to work all 5 of them probably into a quest, would be a bit too much, but any one of those, if you were stuck for ideas, could give you a launching pad. I kind of like this idea of launch pads as these articles. I think that's probably what's best served by this magazine. So we've got Tabletop Heroes here, mostly like these 2 and a bit columns talking about the Citadel Open Day and the things that were on display there. The Fighting Fantasy big plastic monsters, that takes up about that much of it, trying to convince people it's a good idea. Sculpted shields takes up another part of it, and the water slide transfers as well for shield designs, the arcane armorials coming out, as well as a bit of a discussion over slaughter bases, and a photo of the 2,000 apparently gamers who participated in the 1985 Citadel Open Day on March the 16th, 17th. Here's a look at some more entries, and these are the Open Day painting competition entries. So interesting to compare these with the later Golden Demon entries. Here's a far more pastoral scene, much less of a battle scene going on here. This is the best diorama class, and who's this by? Oh, it's by Goblin Master Kev Adams himself. Excellent. There you go. I wonder if he sculpted a lot of that by hand, probably. This apparently was a trophy that was awarded. It's a diorama in and of itself, but apparently it was a trophy. Best in Show trophy, Nick Sewell's Warhammer Regiment of Goblins. Not green, well, some of them are green, and quite an eclectic mix with the kind of banner that you would expect from a regiment of this era. Figure 4, the best diorama class on the first day of the show, so that was the second day, the first day. The 3 lovely Barrow Wights there, guarding their treasure from the thieving hobbitses at the front here. The overall winner of the show, Simon Cass. Are you still painting? Are you still around? Dark Elves, very, very different to the newly released in 1995 Dark Elves. These guys have got a lot more of a sort of Melnibonéan look to them, but they've still got the little diamond-shaped things on their helmets, not sure what they're supposed to be, and the chainmail cloaks, so not too different. The shield designs obviously have changed quite significantly. Here's Dave Andrews of the mighty building making fame, painting up one of the plastic Fighting Fantasy figures to prove that they can look nice. Certainly this one can anyway. And then here's 2 of the Middle-earth, then current Middle-earth range figures, Gandalf obviously, and a Rohan Lancer. Not prize winners, these 2, but still entries in the Open Day painting competition, and quite lovely. Yes, it would be interesting to know, especially, I mean, the Barrow Wights here, they look quite washed out, but then everything looks quite washed out, and I wonder if it's just the nature of the photography and the printing at the time. Having seen a lot of the 90s figures in Brian Ansell's cabinets at Foundry, a a lot of those are a lot more vibrant than they appear in White Dwarf, and those White Dwarfs appear much more vibrant than these, so I wonder if these are actually a lot more vibrant. But certainly this sort of set of muted tones is something that I always associate with miniatures from this era, and actually I would love to paint stuff. I've tried a few times to paint stuff in these kind of muted tones and it doesn't really work. I'm not sure what I'm doing. Maybe not mixing enough white in with stuff, probably. Not desaturating it enough. But if you're an expert at painting in muted tones, do let me know how to do that. Gobbledygook drops in on Fatso to say hello. And we come to the end of... there's those Viking fantasy figures again. And we come to the end of the White Dwarfs. So there we are. That is our run through, very quickly, of June 1985 and 1995. Stay with us. Next week we're going to be looking at the first of the Encyclopedia Warhammer volumes, so very much looking forward to that. Here's a sneak preview. I shall see you with that next week. Take care.